Hi, I'm Linda from Living Linda Abroad, and today I am joined by Susan Lindsay, who moved to Portugal a couple of years ago, and she moved with just 5 suitcases, and today she is going to tell us all about her journey. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what area of Portugal you decided to settle in and why.
Okay. I moved to Coimbra, which is inland, roughly between Porto and Lisbon. And I moved here in November. It'll be 4 years that I've lived here, which seems amazing to me. Why I moved, I've told people I think that for a move like this, it's almost always something that is pushing you and something that is pulling you. And I had worked for a French-owned company many years ago and traveled a lot in France, and so that I had thought about moving to Europe when I retired. So there was that, and I love to travel. I wanted to see more of Europe than I had seen, so there was that. When I looked at statistics for Portugal, the cost of living looked good, the crime rate was low, the healthcare was good, all of those practical things. And then what was pushing me was the political situation in the US, which seemed to be getting worse, and the gun culture, some of those kinds of things really made me want to see what life could be like someplace else. So I came here on a scouting trip in October 2019, and I stayed about a month. I had 5 or 6 cities on a list that I had kind of narrowed down. I went to 3 of them, and then I came to Coimbra, and I never went to the other ones. I just spent the rest of the time here. So there's a saying that you don't pick Coimbra, Coimbra picks you. So I'm grateful to have been chosen by Coimbra.
Awesome. I hadn't heard that saying before, but that's really good.
Yes.
You said that the political situation and all of the other things, that's what inspired you to move to Portugal. Is that right?
That's part of it. Like I said, it was the pushing and pulling, those factors of things that I wanted to get away from and things I wanted to go toward.
What were the biggest challenges that you faced when you were downsizing your belongings?
For me, it was the books. Everybody has kind of what their favorite thing in life is, and I'm a lifelong avid reader. I am a writer. I spent 10 years as a manuscript editor, so I had hundreds and hundreds of books, and many were books that I had edited. Some were books that were written by friends of mine. Some were signed copies from authors that I adored. So that was really hard to get rid of the books. I did bring, I think, 15 or 20 of them in my suitcases, but that was quite a change for me to go from being surrounded by books to not having my books. But other than that, there really isn't anything I regret leaving in the United States. I just wish I'd been able to bring more of the books.
So how did you decide what to let go of and what to keep?
I actually thought about this a lot, and so I had kind of this list of criteria. So early on, I made the decision that I wasn't going to ship furniture here. I moved during COVID, so that was certainly a factor. But I also looked at the cost of shipping things. I looked at the fact that it takes a few months for things to get here. And I talked to people who had done that, and in the meantime, they had to go out and buy stuff anyway. So I just thought, I'm just going to move without it. It's less hassle, less paperwork. Also, I was moving by myself. I think if you have a spouse or a partner that you're moving with, then you have that division of labor. You have 2 people trying to coordinate everything. And for me, it was just me. I was trying to sell my business. I was trying to sell my home, all of those other things as well. So I just decided it was easier to not ship things. So that being said, then I made some criteria for what can I bring. So the list was things like, I'm thinking I'm going to bring stuff in my suitcases. So is this item heavy? Is this item fragile? Is it something that's bulky? is it something that's valuable, whether in terms of monetary value or sentimental value? Is it something that can be easily replaced in Portugal? And so I kind of, looked at things with that kind of a lens, and that really helped me sort things out. I did have, like, on my walls, I had signs that said take, give away, and then a question mark. So that I had like piles of things underneath these signs in my living room.
And so your 5 suitcases, did you get them all under 50 pounds? Or did you have to pay in excess baggage?
I did. I got them all under the weight limit, which was a little strange to do because, like, the website would say one thing and the ticketing would say something else. And I called customer service, and it's like there didn't seem to be real clarity on this. And then I was trying to weigh them with nothing more than a bathroom scale. I bought a luggage scale, and it didn't work, and I was frustrated. So I didn't have to pay any extra baggage fees in terms of weight. My son was kind enough to use his travel points to upgrade my ticket to business class, so I had a higher luggage allowance there in terms of the number of bags as well as the weight. So, it all worked out in the end.
Do you recall what
And of course, during COVID, the airlines were desperate to fill up planes too, so that might have played a role.
Right. Do you recall what the extra suitcases cost in terms of the extra? I know you said you had extra baggage allowance, but there could have been some that you had to pay extra for.
I don't remember that I had to pay for anything. That could just be my faulty memory. I think the fee that was cited was, I don't know. I think people have paid $200 or something to bring a bag over. But again, you've got to evaluate what's the value of the stuff in the suitcase. Can I replace that for whatever the baggage fee is?
Right.
Do I want to? Do I want to deal with that hassle of trying to find things here? Yeah, so.
Right. What advice would you give somebody who is considering a similar move abroad?
Well, I'll tell you a story. My former mother-in-law, years ago, they had a house fire, and nobody died, nobody was injured, but they lost the house and they lost pretty much all the belongings. And she was somebody with exquisite taste. So it's a beautifully decorated home. She had a lot of antiques, a lot of beautiful things. And I was talking to her afterward and expressed my regrets that she had lost everything. And she said, it's just stuff. Stuff can be replaced. And I was surprised because that seemed out of character for her. But it was something I thought of a lot during the move. It's just stuff, It has whatever value we assign it. And when you come here, you can find pretty much anything you need. I would say one thing that somebody tipped me before I came. For people who are larger size or taller or have big feet, people in Portugal tend to be smaller. So those are the kinds of things. If you're bringing just a small amount, make sure you fill your suitcase with clothes and shoes that are going to fit you.
At least for a couple of years before you decide to go back for another visit or something like that, or until you have time to find the items. I know I've been searching for a few items for a while, but I actually just found a mortar and pestle, so I was quite pleased with myself.
Well, there you go. Yeah. I typically, when I go back to the U.S., I will take one suitcase and then bring back two, because I'll go shopping. So
getting back to the items that you did not come with, how did you dispose of them? Did you give everything away, or did you sell them?
It was a combination of things. Again, because it was COVID, there wasn't going to be a yard sale. I had thought about a yard sale, a garage sale or something, and that wasn't going to happen. So I used Facebook Marketplace and a website called nextdoor.com, which is based on neighborhoods, and sold some things that way. And then, of course, if people were coming into my home, I told them, you have to mask up if you come in. And for smaller items, I was on the second floor. I had a condominium, and I was on the second floor. So I would carry items to the base of the stairs, and they could do the pickup there. And then I had a locked mailbox, and they could drop the cash in the mailbox. So that was, we had to kind of make some adjustments just because it was COVID. So I sold a lot of things that way. And then I had two grandsons who were moving into their first apartments. And so they were like, yay, stuff from grandma, So they got some of the household items and some of the bits of furniture. And then a lot of it I just gave away. I gave away to friends and relatives and neighbors. And when it got down to the last things, my living room was pretty much empty of furniture. And I just put things on the floor in a great big circle around the perimeter. And I called up friends and had them come over a couple at a time, and they just went through and picked what they wanted and took it. And then the rest just went to Goodwill. So, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a great way. And I've heard that Facebook Marketplace is a great way to get rid of stuff. And I actually use that as well when I came here too.
Yeah, I think you have to be aware, there are some scams on there. But I think overall, if you're careful in terms of the money and exchanging items and that sort of thing, it worked well for me.
Can you share any surprising or unexpected experiences that you've had from your move?
Probably the most unexpected and sort of disturbing really was just getting here because of COVID. And I don't know how much detail you want, but to make a long story short, it was very difficult to juggle getting the results of the COVID test back in time to catch the plane. So my flight was actually rescheduled. Either I rescheduled it or the airline rescheduled it because they were rescheduling flights that weren't full. A total of 6 times. I had 4 or 5 COVID tests. I actually drove all the way from Louisville, Kentucky to Newark, New Jersey in a rental car because the Newark airport had an on-site COVID testing site. And so I ended up leaving the United States a full week late. So that was probably the worst part, just getting here in the midst of that. But I think because I had done my homework, I had really read everything I could find. I'd watched endless YouTube videos and done the Google Earth, walk around neighborhoods, that kind of thing. I really don't feel like there were a lot of other surprises. For me, I felt like I came into it pretty well prepared.
Very good. Yeah, that can be quite frustrating when your plane keeps getting canceled.
Yes, it was very frustrating. I never want to see the inside of the Marriott Hotel at Newark ever again.
I'm sure. How did you manage the emotional aspects of leaving behind a larger home and surroundings and coming to another country where you don't know much of the area?
I have moved a lot in my life. I think this is my 24th or 25th move. And those were within the United States. One move was to Hawaii, so it was a transoceanic move. But I sort of like that. I grew up with a family that loved to travel, and we went all kinds of places when I was a kid. And so that just feels like an adventure to me. It doesn't feel intimidating. So I had thought about what that meant to leave family and friends. My grandkids were growing up or grown up and leading their own lives. It's not like I was doing a lot of hanging out with the grandkids at that point. And of course, my 2 kids are adults and have their own lives. Mm-hmm. And I think technology made a huge difference in that decision for me. I knew that I could stay in touch through Facebook, WhatsApp, email, whatever. There are all these ways to stay in touch with people that did not exist years ago, mm-hmm. or that were prohibitively expensive, to make long distance phone calls or whatever. And so I think that was some reassurance that I could continue to stay in touch with people. And I belonged to 2 writing groups when I was in Louisville. I'm a writer. I continue to be a writer, which is, of course, something that I can do from anywhere. And so I belong to 2 writing groups in the U.S. And one of them, I've continued to be a member, and I just participate by Zoom once a month. So, those things are possible, I think, because of technology in a way that they would not have been otherwise. And in terms of the culture, I just, there was, I guess, culture shock in the things that you go, didn't think of that, but nothing that was traumatic or nothing that was upsetting to me, just quirky things that you just have to get used to.
You mentioned that you're a writer. What kind of books do you write, and do you have anything coming up next?
Yes, I write historical nonfiction. So I had a book that came out actually in 2020, in July of 2020, in the midst of all of this, trying to get ready to move. And it's the story of two families of slaves from Kentucky who were freed and then migrated to Liberia, Africa in 1836, and then stayed in touch. They wrote back and forth to their former owner. So this part of the story is told in their own words from their letters that still exist. So that was the book in 2020. And then I'm now working on a new book about a Portuguese man who was the consul general in Bordeaux, France during the Second World War, at the start of the Second World War. So as people were leaving all the countries that Germany invaded, they were heading to the south of France. The goal was they had to reach Lisbon. If you've ever seen the movie Casablanca, everybody's trying to get to Lisbon. And the reason is that it was the last free port in all of Western Europe. So it was the last place you could get a passenger ship and get out. So to get to Portugal, to get to Lisbon, they had to have a Portuguese transit visa. And so this man issued a lot of visas, thousands of them, despite the fact that his government had told him not to. And he couldn't stand the idea of these people being stuck, and many of them were Jews, many of them were people who were in great danger. So anyway, he was horribly punished for it and died penniless at the end of his life. So I'm writing a book about him.
Well, that sounds fascinating. Do you have an idea of when that one will be published?
It'll be a few years. It takes, even after you find a publisher, it takes probably 2 years from the time you sign a contract till the book comes out. So we're talking probably 3 years down the road at least. But I think it's a cool story. It's been a really interesting one to research. And some of the people he wrote visas for were Salvador Dali, the Crown Prince of Austria, the married couple who wrote the Curious George books, Huey Lewis's mother. So just I think he made an interesting impact on the world by some of the people that he saved.
Fascinating. And what is the name of your first book? And can I get the link and I'll post it in the description below?
Oh, absolutely. It's called Liberty Brought Us Here. And it's available on Amazon in print, ebook, or audiobook. And then it's also available on the publisher's website. It was University Press of Kentucky. So I'll send you that link as well. And the new book that's coming out, I don't yet have a title for it, but it's about, the man that it's about is Aristides de Sousa Mendes.
Okay, that's a name. That's hard to say.
Yes. And I'm still not sure I'm pronouncing it quite right, but I'm trying.
What has been the most rewarding part of your new life in Coimbra?
I feel like I am leading a more serene life here, a more authentic life. And I think that this whole process, because I retired at the same time, so I retired and I moved, so two different things there. But I think this whole process has led me to sort of redefine what is success. What does success look like? And I think at this point in my life, success is leading your best life. It's not trying to impress people with the size of your house or how big your car is or your latest plastic surgery or, whatever. I think in the United States, we've shifted very far away from what real success looks like. And I feel like here, it's been nice to revisit that and feel like I can lead this kind of a life now.
So you moved and you retired, two very high stressors in life. And you did
Yes.
that during COVID. How did you keep without going crazy? How did you do that?
Well, you're assuming I didn't go crazy. Actually, as I said, I had done my homework, so I feel like I knew what to expect coming here, and it was not my first major move. So I kind of had a sense of, what I needed to do and what was going to happen here. The COVID was less of a stressor here because of how the Portuguese government handled it. I felt far safer here than I did in the US. And I think once I tend to be somebody that it takes me a long time to make a decision. But once I've made the decision, I'm 100% behind it. So there really wasn't a lot of second guessing or feeling stressed over it. Like once I made the decision, it was, full speed ahead. So.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does, yes. Yeah. I know you touched on cultural differences a little bit earlier, but did you face any other cultural or logistical challenges? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Well, I think, initially, of course, I was doing a tremendous amount of shopping here. I moved into an unfurnished place, had made Facebook friends with somebody who actually lived at that time in my same building, and she loaned me a bed and mattress. So once I had someplace to sleep, everything else could kind of come along as I could find it. But I did a lot of shopping for furniture, household goods, that kind of thing. And some of the furniture I bought new, some of it I found some secondhand stores and found some things. So there was that whole learning curve of trying to compare dollars to euros. Like, okay, it's, 400 euros. How much is it in dollars? So you can have some idea. Trying to understand the names of different kinds of furniture, trying to go to websites that were only in Portuguese and figure out when they were open and how to get there and do they deliver, those. So there were those sorts of language issues, logistical issues. If a store is 10 kilometers away from me, how far is that in miles? So I found a great little app. Somebody actually recommended it to me called Units Plus, and I have that on my phone now. And it converts currency, it converts miles and distances, weight, all of those kinds of things. So that was really helpful for me. I moved just before the end of November, so it was just the month right before Christmas. So I had decided I was going to make Christmas cookies. It's something I always like to do at Christmas time. And I had brought some recipes with me, and I had brought U.S. measuring cups and measuring spoons with me. Well, then it was like, okay, I got to go buy cookie sheets. All right, will the cookie sheet fit in this oven that is much smaller than the oven that I'm used to having? Where can I find cookie cutters? How do I convert the Celsius to Fahrenheit? And those, so it was a lot of those day-to-day things. They weren't big things, but there is kind of a cumulative effect that you feel like a fish out of water at first. And it's okay, you just have to hang in there and you'll get through it. It's not fatal, but it can be, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's the thing, that one of the biggest things. We always feel like we have to be in control, we have to know everything that's going on, and you won't. You'll get here and there are going to be things you don't know, and you're going to have to ask for help, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world.
So what are some of your favorite local spots or activities that you've discovered since you've moved to Portugal?
Well, I love to walk. I always have done a lot of walking. And so as I said, I live in Coimbra. There are hills here, but there are hills in many of the major cities in Portugal. But getting used to the hills here. But then the reward is you get to the top of the hill and there are these incredible views. So I love Coimbra. I love walking around the city. I love finding new little corners or neighborhoods that I've not found yet. I love the public transportation here. I chose to not have a car. And so, I've gone to, I don't, I don't know how many, I can't list them all, but most of the major cities and towns in Portugal. I particularly like Tomar. I like Obidos. I love Porto. It was a little too big in terms of me wanting to live there, but I love it as a city. And Braga, so it's kind of a new adventure every day, actually, which I like.
I've really enjoyed exploring some of the towns as well, and I try to do that intermixed with traveling overseas, or within Europe, I should say. We are overseas
right.
now. So yes, it's fun to do, to mix the local travel and with your going to other countries.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've been able to do some international travel here. I plan to do more, but I've been to France and Spain and Holland. So yeah, I'll get around to the rest of Europe.
Yes, I mean we can only do so much, right? Have you been able to build a community of expats and Portuguese alike since you've moved here?
Yes. And for this, I have to give credit where credit is due. I was not much of a Facebook person, but I got much more involved with Facebook in the year or so before I moved. So I was already following different Facebook pages, some of which all of us who move here know that have tremendous resources and are really helpful, but also locating Facebook pages in the specific areas I was interested in moving in and following the conversations in those, who can recommend a podiatrist, where's the grocery store, those kinds of day-to-day things. And so then once I actually moved, I already had a handful of people that I thought, okay, I want to meet these people in person. I want to connect with them in Coimbra. And so right from the first few days, there were people that I could go have lunch with or that I could go for a walk with. One woman had arrived here a month or so before I did, and she loved to shop. And so she was just a tremendous help because I needed somebody to go shopping with, to show me the stores. So I think that was really helpful. And I think it's really tempting when you move to a place that's unfamiliar to want to just curl up in your apartment and stay there. It's, the world out there is a little scary. It's a little uncomfortable. So it's real tempting to just stay at home. And so I told myself for the first year, I was going to go to every event and say yes to every invitation that I could for that first full year. So I went to volunteer things, and I went to lunches, and I went to coffee get-togethers. And when people said, I'm coming to scout out Coimbra, does anybody want to meet me? I would always say yes. And so I think that was really helpful in terms of getting to meet other immigrants. And I have met, and when I say that, I don't just mean other Americans. I have met people from Egypt, from India, from Malta, from South Africa, from all over the world. And so that's been really satisfying. In terms of meeting Portuguese people, it's been more challenging because of the language. I was taking classes for about 2.5 years. I pulled away about 6 months ago because I've kind of hit a critical point with my book, and I need to focus on that right now. But I have some Portuguese. So mostly, though, the Portuguese people that I know are the people who own restaurants or cafes on my block, my dentist, Bolt drivers. I have great conversations with Bolt drivers because it's a captive audience. They're stuck in the car with me, and there's not other distractions. There's not other people or other background noise. And most of them are more than happy to try and help me, improve my Portuguese. So I hope to be able to build better friendships. Within my building, it's a fairly small building. There's just 4 units. But I know my neighbors who are Portuguese. I know them by name and know them enough to say hi to them and, have small chats with them. So.
Well, that's good. Portuguese is a language that we're going to be studying probably for the rest of our lives, right? Because it's a very difficult language.
So. Yeah. I think so. And had taken French many years ago, and as I said, I worked for a French company. I was never real fluent in French, but enough to get by. But I think it's easy to assume if you work really hard, you can pick up a language in 6 months or a year. And that's just not true. I've talked to a number of people who have taught languages or who are linguistic experts, and they say 3 to 5 years for day-to-day conversation, and 5 to 7 if you're going to conduct business in that language. So I think that was really helpful for me to know, to quit beating myself up that I'm not fluent yet, and to just celebrate the small successes, to say I'm better than I was a year ago. So
that's awesome. I hadn't heard that before, so that makes me feel a little bit better too.
yes, yes.
So Susan, in the last minute or two that we have left, can you give me one of your top secret tips for anyone who is planning a move that is similar to yours, and how to assimilate into the new surroundings?
I think just embrace every day, just fall into it, embrace it, don't try to control it. Do your homework ahead of time, be as meticulous as you can, but it has to be a head decision and a heart decision. It has to be logical, but it also has to be emotional. And once you get here, the emotional part really kicks in, and just celebrate that experience, just like I said, just embrace it, wallow in it. It's your new life, and you've chosen it. And will it be perfect every day? No. Will there be days when you're frustrated and you're wanting to tear your hair out? Yes, of course there will be. But remember that, bureaucracy is frustrating in the U.S. too, and they're not going to change for you. You have to change for them. So, I think if you go into it with those kinds of approaches and attitudes, it'll go a long way.
That is awesome advice, Susan. And I wanted to thank you for being with me here today. I hope to meet with you in person one day. I know the 2 times that I've been to Coimbra, you've been off, one promoting your book back in November of, November of 2022. And I think you were traveling in Spain the other time I went, but hopefully I'll be back to Coimbra soon and we can actually meet in person. But thank you very much for being with me.
I would love to meet you in person, yes.
Me too. Thank you very much.